Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another live stream coaching session. Cliff Ravenscraft here. And in today's live streaming call, in just a moment, I'm going to be speaking with Jason Smith, and we're going to do a full-blown live, real, authentic coaching session here on the internet. Now, before I begin, I wonder what I did with my Apple Pencil, because I want to be able to take notes. Oh my gosh, oh, never mind. Found it. Okay, so before I begin with this coaching session, I'd like to make an announcement. If you are interested in having a complimentary 90-minute one-on-one full-blown coaching session with no strings attached, without any expectation and no obligation, you will ever become a paid client in any way, shape, or form. All you need to do is email me, cliff@cliffravenscraft.com. Put live stream coaching in the subject line. Now, if you are full-time self-employed or you're a career professional and you're looking for a coach, and you prefer to have a private one-on-one with me, if you are thinking about hiring a coach and you don't want to do this live stream thing, I'll still give you a 90-minute one-on-one complimentary experience, still with no strings attached, still with no expectation, no obligation that you'll ever become a paid client. But if you are seriously considering working with me as your coach, then simply email me, again, cliff@cliffravenscraft.com. Put coaching in the subject line and explain that you're interested in one of those private one-on-one 90-minute conversations. All right, with that being said, Jason Smith, welcome to the live stream coaching. Are you ready to sit in the hot seat, my friend?
Yes, sir. I'm ready and I'm excited.
So just for a brief background for anybody that doesn't know this, it was March of 2022. I brought you in through the Prosperous Coach system. I'm like, I see Jason's doing some incredible things. He's connecting with me in my community. I knew that you had some things going on where you wanted to coach people and things of that nature. And I brought you in through the Prosperous Coach method for creating clients. Back then, we had a full-blown 90-minute session. You had some insights, came away from it, and then we came back together 2 weeks later, did a follow-up, and I'd love to hear from you real quickly. What was it that we were first connecting about, and what kind of impact has that had on you over the last 18 months since we've chatted together?
So the first time we interacted, it's because I was in a clubhouse room with you and you had noticed that I was in there for over 90 minutes and you reached out to me through Clubhouse. And that first coaching experience, when you offered it to me, I thought to myself, why would I not take this opportunity? Because I'd been listening to you and many others for years on podcasts. And I thought, this guy is one of my heroes. Why would I not listen to him and take this opportunity? So I did. I signed up for that coaching experience. And that first one, I don't think I really knew what I wanted or what I was trying to do at that time. I was currently at that time, I was unemployed. And that was the first question you asked me. You said, are you full-time self-employed? And I said, actually, Cliff, I'm unemployed. And you quickly pointed out to me how my declaring that statement was creating a mindset of being an unemployed person that I was completely unaware of. All of my behaviors were that of someone who was unemployed. And it was no wonder I wasn't experiencing any kind of success in my life at that time. And so that was the first eye-opening insight that you gave to me. Then you assigned me the homework to go listen to the Prosperous Coach, listen to your coaching podcast. And when I finished up with all of that, within a week, I reached back out to you and you said, wow, I don't think anybody's done this in a week before. But yeah, we can get you back on a call. And I got back on the call with you. And that was the day that I found out that I'm a coach. Mm. And you had pulled on me. You're like, who have you coached? Who have you coached before this time? And I kind of had some answers that weren't fully developed that I was thinking of off the cuff at that time. And I mentioned there were some business owners in my church and people like that. And then you said, but before that. And I said, well, maybe in the military. And you said, before that. And we went further back until you prompted me with this suggestion. You said, was there ever a time that you were maybe in high school or junior high school and you were coaching your friends? And that's brought back, it surfaced a memory of me sitting on the telephone with my friends for hours on end. And at that time I used to talk to them I just hold space for them. And some of the things that they would talk to me about were relationships with their parents or their significant others. And I was helping them to solve those problems as early as junior high school. So it's been a gift that's been in me for all these years. I just was unconsciously aware of it. And then we brought it to that conscious awareness, and it's been a wonderful journey since then.
Awesome. And just before we went live, I asked you, because I haven't chatted with you a whole lot since then. And one of the things I asked is, hey, as far as I recall, when we left off in March of 2022, you were going to go out and start doing some connecting, some inviting, and then going in and bringing some people into some coaching conversations and making proposals. And will you share with me how things have been? Have you coached anyone in the last 18 months?
I absolutely have. Initially, I started out by contacting some people that I had been connected with online. And then we got into some coaching experiences. I offered the 90-minute free coaching, just like you done and modeled for me. And after that, we went through it a couple times, and I didn't sign anybody up with a proposal at that time. I tried a few different other avenues. I started a course for teaching podcasting. I had one person sign up for it, but that one person paid me, and I coached him through creating a podcast for about 6 to 7 months. And then I also started a mastermind group in that time. The mastermind group was comprised of people who I felt were entrepreneurs, that were kingdom-minded entrepreneurs, and I felt that they were in my peer group. And I came up with this when I was doing an analysis of how I spent my time in the previous year. And I looked at all the relationships and the people that I had spent time with. And I thought, who do I want to spend more time with? Because you've heard that saying that Jim Rohn had once said, that you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So I thought, who are the 5 people I want to spend more time with in the next year? And when I identified those 5 people, I reached out and say, hey, would you be interested in being part of a peer mastermind group? This is just a place where we can practice our leadership skills together. I'm not charging anything for it. It's just where we can serve one another and be an encouragement to each other. And I had 4 people out of the 5 sign up, and we had gone through that mastermind group for about until June of this past year. And that's when the summer came and people's schedules got hectic. And after that, it kind of fell apart, and we have not been able to reconnect since then. But it has been a transformative experience, because all through that time, it pushed me as a leader to grow. It caused me to do things that I wasn't doing before. I even started writing a book this past year that I've wanted to be an author since I was 10 years old. But early on, when I was 10, I had this conversation with my dad, and he looked me in the eye and he said, you really need to find a better job, because writing is not going to pay the bills. And that sat with me for a long time, probably the majority of my life, that I didn't have this acceptance from my mom and my dad. I didn't have this encouragement that I craved from them. And so this whole dream of being a writer one day felt crushed. And I feel like, looking back over my life, there are so many things that I did in my life. In high school, I was in marching band, I was in theater, and I did all of these things. Why? To get the approval of my parents, and I never did. And so that's just a revelation I've had this year, is that I've been striving for acceptance and approval, but I don't need it. I don't need it, Cliff, because God's already approved of who I am, and I just need to walk in it.
Can I ask you, is it that you don't need it, or is it that you don't need it externally?
That's a good question. And I think it leans towards what you just said. I don't need it externally. It's found inside of me. In fact, I would, for challenging myself and your listeners today, that if we don't accept who we are inside, then how can we ever expect people on the outside to accept who we are? So it all starts within. And so that's where I need the acceptance more, is from me personally. And once I have that, then I don't have to worry about whether somebody else accepts me, because I already have that acceptance.
Yeah, that's a key indicator there for me personally. I find I really do need acceptance. I really do need encouragement. I really need support in my vision and in my dreams. But that is all required from me within and my connection with God. So but you and I and most people have been conditioned to get what we want from the outside. The approval of our parents, the approval of our religious leaders, the approval of our peers, the approval of this. We've just lived life in such a way that we're so conditioned that this is where I seek approval, is out there. This is where I seek that praise. This is where I seek that that encouragement is out there. But I love what Jesus says. It's like, listen, don't worry about any of that stuff. Don't worry about, he says, he's not only what you will eat, what you will wear, and all this other stuff, but even all of that stuff. Don't worry about that. In fact, he said, listen, if you want to pray, don't be like the Pharisees and all these other people. Instead, go and pray in a private, quiet place. Be alone and get what you need there. Seek first the kingdom of God. And when asked where the kingdom of God, it's within.
That's right.
It's within. Find it within.
Amen.
All right. So, Jason, for the rest of this conversation, I'd like to ignore the fact that there's anyone ever going to watch this. There's nobody here now, just you and I. So, with that being said, what can you and I talk about right here today with the remaining 1 hour and 16 minutes and 37 seconds that we have left that will make this an incredible experience you'll never forget for the rest of your life?
There's about 4 things that I wrote down this morning. And if I were to go in the order of what I think is the most important, the 9th one is actually the most important. And this is,
Wait, hold on a second. Did you just say I wrote down 4 things, and if I think about what is most important, it's the 9th thing? I'm just making sure. Did I hear that correctly, or am I like...
No, you heard it correctly. You heard it correctly. There were 9 things when I initially wrote it down.
Okay.
And then I went through the list and I crossed out the ones that were least important, which left the top 4. And number 9 is actually the highest of those 4. And it says that I want my highest wisdom state to be executive, with a committee of the right ego states working together to create an amazing, thriving life. That's one thing I want. The second thing is I want to know what additional skills should I study and develop to position myself as a world-class coach. The third one will be unmasking any fear or hesitation that I might have that's preventing me from fully embracing coaching. And I say unmasking because I feel that in my conscious awareness, I don't think there's a fear, but sometimes in the unconscious mind, it wants to protect us from certain things. And so there may be a hesitation there that I'm not fully aware of, and I want to draw that out. And the last thing would be finding or creating the right words that'll attract the people who I would love to work with.
Give me 1 second. Find or create words that attract people I want to work with. All right, you've already prioritized these, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's jump into number 1. I want my highest wisdom state to be the state of being from which I enter into my existence of life on a consistent basis. Something to that nature?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Because this is just you and I'm going to leave that open for whatever interpretation or misinterpretation of what that will mean, because this is just you and I having this conversation. I'm fully aware, I believe, of what you mean by that statement. So how can I assist you in that? What do you have a question related to that? Are you experiencing an obstacle as it relates to that being your existence in life?
I guess my question internally would be, do I have my highest wisdom state in the executive currently? And if it's not, how do I bring that wisdom state to the forefront so that it is in the executive position, operating and directing, or being the master controller, if you will, of all of the things that happen in my life?
Okay, those are two great questions. All right, so the first question I'm going to ask you, do you have your wisdom state in the executive position?
At this moment, I believe so. In every moment, I don't think so. I think I'm operating by a default. And I don't know what that wisdom, what state that would be that's default. When I go to work, I just go in, I plug in, I do what I need to do, and then I come home. Then I'm with my kids at home, and usually they're pulling on me to do a bunch of different things while I still have other obligations that I want to do. So I don't know if I'm ever in those times. I don't feel that I'm in or operating in that highest wisdom state.
Is it important to you to have an understanding or a label or some way of thinking about the non-wisdom state? Is that important for you right now? You said, I don't know how I would define it when I'm in default.
Yes.
Would it be helpful to have a label or some descriptor of what non-wisdom state is?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. So what what labels or what phrases would you use to describe when you are living by default, habitually, hypnotically going through your day? If it's not your wisdom state, what state or states are those default states?
I'm just checking in, and I feel the word conformity.
Mm. Okay. Is there anything else?
That's the strongest feeling that I get when you ask that question, is what would I label that default state? It would be conformity. And what does it look like? Probably it looks like black and white, like a gray blob. It's just there. That's what I would say it is.
All right. So so how would you describe wisdom? Give me some descriptors of what wisdom state actually is.
So wisdom to me would be knowledge, power, confidence, boldness. I see all of these things. There's strength and inner strength. There's a knowing.
So what I'm hearing is right now in this season, you're doing pretty good at living with the not with a sense of knowledge, awareness, if you will, some power and confidence and boldness. And my handwriting is illegible. Inner something.
Inner strength.
Thank you.
You're
Inner
welcome.
strength and knowing. Inner strength and knowing. So those are the things that are part of your existence today.
Mm-hmm.
And seemingly, from what I'm hearing from you, the antithesis of that is conformity.
Yes.
And so am I hearing correctly that when you are living in conformity, are you saying that I may have access to knowledge, but I'm not applying it because my knowledge may not conform with what other people expect from me? It may cause some level of maybe confrontation or conflict with others around me. So therefore, I have to maybe set my knowledge aside. Maybe my power causes a little bit of concern in those around me. Maybe my confidence causes me to step out and boldly do things that are uncomfortable for others. And sometimes they're not knowing about what drives me and why I desire to do these things. Sometimes they encourage me to step back out of the things that I confidently would move towards, that boldness and that inner strength and that knowing. It's like, are you sure? So it sounds to me like that default living and that conformity is the antithesis of this wisdom. I just want to know, that's what came up for me, but I just want to make sure, is that tracking, or is there more that you would say to clarify the distinction between wisdom and non-wisdom?
No, I think that lands very well, and it's a very good distinction between those two states. Absolutely.
Excellent. So okay, so the question is, the first question was, do I live with wisdom state in the executive position? And the answer that you gave is, that I heard, is that I'm doing it pretty well right now, but I recognize that I slip back into default. How frequently do you feel that you slip back into default? Let's just say, when has this been the forefront of your desire to put wisdom in the executive seat consciously? When did this become a dedicated goal for you?
It became a dedicated goal for me when I went through my hypnosis training with the Mike Mandel Hypnosis Academy. There was a course where he talked about ego states and ego state therapy. And that's when I had learned about these different states that we are all made up of. And he had told a story about how he had negotiated with his ego states to put his best ego state into the executive position. And then from that point on, his life completely transformed. And I thought, that is something I need to work with and discover what are the ego states that are currently stepping into the executive that don't belong there, don't belong doing the job that the ultimate wisdom state should be doing.
When did you go through this training?
This was I started in January, and I received my certification from Mike Mandel in April. So I'm still enrolled, and I still participate in all of the group activities. So it's been about 10 months.
Okay, so you've been working at this for, I'm going to write down 5 to 10 months.
Absolutely.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is, what you would like to do is have a level of mastery at your ability to live your life consciously, which for me, that's the language I use, where I'm intentionally choosing the state of being from which I operate.
Yes.
For you, the language that you're using is putting my executive state putting my wisdom state in the executive position. So you want to have some level of mastery to where this is something that pretty much is just your normal average state of being.
Absolutely.
And so over the past 5 to 10 months, since this is your desired intentional goal, not that this has to be anywhere accurate, just whatever percentage comes to your mind. When you were first introduced to this and you set the intention that this is what you desire, what percentage of any given week, any Sunday through Saturday week, what percentage, back when you first set the intention, what was the percentage of time where wisdom state was in the executive position for you?
From the time it started, or currently?
Right when you set the goal.
Set the intention. At that time, I knew I was a coach. I knew that's what I was called to do. I knew I was moving in that direction, and I was studying and learning, but I don't feel that I fully embraced it or fully operated in that level of mastery. Maybe 5%.
Okay, 5%. That's
5%
great.
5% sounds good to me. I can feel that.
Let me ask you this. Do you know how to ride a bike?
Yes.
Okay. So do you remember learning how to ride a bike?
Yes.
When you first got on the bike, you probably, 5% or less was successful at maintaining balance. Yes?
Absolutely.
Right. Okay. And so chances are it took a while before you worked at this thing. Did you use training wheels before you went without training wheels?
Yes.
So did I. So even on training wheels, there was times when it's like, I got the training wheels on, but the training wheels have kind of been bent up a little bit, such that there are times where I can tell there's 5% of the time I'm kind of like on my own here, but the training wheels are there, and I can hear, each of the training wheels, the left one and the right one, are kind of default settings, right?
Right.
So that's the metaphor that came for me right there. Now, just like anything else, you recognize that mastery. Today, when was the last time you rode a bike?
Oh, it's been years. I don't know.
Right. Perfect example. It's great. You haven't ridden a bike for years. But if you came over to my house and I pulled my bike out and I pulled out a second bike for you and I to go for a bike ride together, how many attempts would it take for you to get up and find your balance on that bike and be able to start pedaling down the road with me?
Just one.
One attempt. I'm there. Because you have mastery of balancing on a bike.
Yes.
All right. So the whole point that I want to make here is that you desire to have your wisdom state be in the executive position, which let's equate that to you desire to be able to wake up in the morning, assumingly that's when you're getting up, is in the morning.
Yes.
No judgment if you're not, but anyway, you're getting up in the morning and you have a desire to get up on the bike of life and live your life with that balance today, rather than defaulting down to the training wheels throughout.
Yeah.
But you recognize that on the scale of learning how to ride a bike, would it take you a couple of weeks, couple of months between the first time getting on a bike with the training wheels and then eventually taking the wheels off and doing all that stuff? But think about that mastery and that practice and all of these things, and how many times you kind of jerk the wheel and all these different things, and things triggered you and you got distracted by something else and you lost your focus and all this other stuff, and you're training your subconscious mind to learn what all those triggers are, to get rid of those. So ultimately one day you can get on a bike and you no longer have to train your nervous system how to balance, how to do this. Your nervous system has been trained to master the skill of balance.
Yes.
And what does that bring up for you as I bring up that metaphor, the fact that mastery takes time? How does that speak to you as you think about this desire and this goal of putting the wisdom state into the executive position?
What comes up for me as you were talking about the bike metaphor is this idea that just do it. Just as you were talking, that's what I felt those words come to me, is like, you don't have to try to ride a bike because you've already mastered it. So just get on the bike and do it.
Let me ask you this. Because I want to make sure, because I was laying down a specific kind of thought and pattern in my mind. I'd like to ask you this. Do you feel like you've mastered putting the wisdom state in the executive position?
I feel I'm close to getting it there.
Okay.
If I started out at 5%, I'm probably today a good 75 to 80% of the way there.
I love that. So that's where you are in the process. And so I still love this idea of, just get on the bike and ride. You know what? The training wheels are off. That's what I'm hearing. It's 75%. The training wheels are off. All right. And by the way, it's just you and I. But I was almost ready to talk to the audience, but I'm like, I refuse. I don't want Jason to do it. I'm not going to do it. But Jason, here's why I bring this up, is because I want you to understand that even if you have, over the past several months, as you've been attempting to consciously make this more and more a part of your life, recognize every time that you were balanced and then all of a sudden you go into a default mode, and the training wheels are engaged and you're back into that kind of default kind of going through your day. to not beat yourself up. It's a part of the mastery process.
Amen. Yeah.
At first, mastery, there are 3 levels of mastery. One is intellectually understanding it. Intellectually, you hear somebody talk about this thing, and you're like, yeah, I agree with that. I understand that. That's just a intellectual agreement with what that is. I believe that. The second step of mastery is going through and implementing, not perfectly, but just implementing. And it's going all the way through. It's like, listen, I have a physical experience of this. I am engaged in this activity. It's not always pretty. It's not always pretty, but I'm engaged in it, right?
Yes.
But where mastery comes in, where you've done it so much that it's just such an emotional part. It's an emotional felt experience within you, such that this is so much a part of me. It's so natural to the way my nervous system understands and can equate this, that my autonomic system, my subconscious mind can just carry this out without my conscious intentional thought devoted to it at all times.
Mm-hmm.
It just becomes a part of who I am. And it comes through repetition.
Yes.
Lots of repetition. And one of the other things that I learned through this process, in learning to ride a bike and learning to do anything else for that matter, mastery only comes after learning and figuring out all the things not to do. All of the failed attempts. It's discovering where are the triggers that's going to trigger me out of that. So understand that for you to live in a wisdom state in the executive position, for you to be able to have that as just a normal way of being on an ongoing mastered kind of level, that you understand that there are all sorts of triggers and beliefs, or just triggers of statements that go into default reaction mode, and if this then that statements in our subconscious programming that will get us out of a wisdom state and into a default mode. Mm-hmm. It's like, when so and so says that, I get angry, and when I get angry, then I go do this, and then I do this, and it's like that. Those things are inside of us, and for us to live in that wisdom state and put it in an executive position on an ongoing basis, we're going to have to go in and clear the landmines of those triggers.
Yes.
And so what I would encourage is, as you're going through this, every time you become aware of that, wow, I set the intention that I wanted my wisdom state to be in the executive position. Can you see how every time you become aware that you have dropped out of it again and went back into default, rather than having any judgment or negative thought, you can actually say, wow, I am thrilled to discover yet another trigger, another landmine in my subconscious programming that needs to be fixed and updated or let go of.
Yes.
Is that valuable to you?
Absolutely. Yeah. It lands very well. I can remember a few times this past year where I felt that I was moving into default. So I had taken a job because when we had first talked, I was unemployed, and I thought, well, we got to get out of this mindset. I can't remember whether you said it or whether Rich Litvin said it in his book. The thought was, if you ever find yourself in need of a client, get a job.
Yes.
So I was like, well, let's go get a job, because then I'll be in a place where I can serve people. And I started out at a doggy daycare because I knew the owner of the daycare. I was thankful for it. It just wasn't enough to take care of my family. So I quickly found another job at Mauser Custom Cabinetry here in Elizabethtown. And it's been fantastic. Well, the guy who trained me, he decided he'd been there with the company for 20 years. And then he decided one day he was going to resign. And so he left. And I quickly found out how little I had been trained and what I didn't know. And so I started trying to build these cabinets on the computer and get them down to the floor. And I was getting all of these errors. And eventually that negative mindset started creeping in. It's like, you're making too many mistakes. You're going to get fired. And all of these things were coming at me. And one day I just said, no, stop. I'm not going to get fired because I'm the only one they have right now. And if they were to fire me, they'd be back in a worse shape than they are right now. So what they're going to do is if I ever get called into the office, they are going to give me 90 days to perfect this. And I'm going to master it in 90 days. And since I made that shift in my mindset and I got rid of that default thinking and I allowed my highest wisdom state to take over control, the entire operation at my job changed. And from that moment, now I'm doing things. I have fewer cabinets that I have to rebuild. And I just trained a guy who he's joined my team. And within 2 weeks, he knows more than I knew in the first 2 weeks that I was working there. So it's been completely transformative once I stepped into that highest wisdom state and allowed it to take over instead of that default negative mindset that I was experiencing.
Awesome. So now it's very clear that you have the answer to the question of, do I live with my wisdom state in the executive position? And how frequently you're currently doing that, right around 75%.
Yes.
And then the next question is, how do I get that to be more frequent? So based upon our dialogue so far, what would you say is how do you get to greater mastery? What in your mind, what comes up?
Immediately, based on what you just said and what I just said, I think about when those triggers come, those negative thoughts that are going to arise, because they do. When they come up, that is a time to pause and go inside and find that inner wisdom state and bring it to the forefront so that we can objectively look at whatever situation we're facing, not emotionally react to it, not judge ourselves or others, but actually sit there, notice it, and then allow that highest wisdom state to move in and make the right decision for us in that moment. And so if I can recognize those times, those triggers, then every time that trigger comes, instead of going to that default, I can move towards the highest wisdom state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. And one last thing that comes up for me, because, I'm very much into this as well. I have my own different language that I use for this. And I consider myself the way that I would describe a very similar goal is I want to live my life consciously and with intention.
Yes.
Rather than by, and I do use the default language, going into default hypnotic rhythm, living unconsciously.
Yeah.
All right. So I feel like today I've been doing this for, I've been working at it since more than 10, 15 years. I've been trying this. And back then I was less than 5%. I would say today I'm probably about 85, maybe 90% of that's of my given 7-day week when I'm consciously awake. I'd say 85, 90% of the time I'm living that way. Now, with that being said, that's not every week. There are times that when I like to do cycling. It's been a couple years since I went out and did like 100-mile bike rides, but I used to do like 500 or 600-mile bike rides every summer. And even though I have thousands of miles on a bike, right? Many, many thousands of miles. It may not be shocking to you to hear that every now and then I still have fallen off my bike. There have been times when I wasn't paying attention, and next thing you know, there was a big pothole on the road, and then down I went. Yeah. Right. And so in the same way, while most of my weeks on average, I'm succeeding around 85, 90% of the time being this intentional, conscious being in the world. There are times that I get stuck into default mode. I get triggered into default mode. And just for me, and I share this with you just so you can feel this, there are sometimes I will be in the default mode and not be aware that has happened for anywhere between several hours to several days. And some cases, in some areas, several weeks or months. But what I have discovered for myself is the importance of when I realize it has happened, when I become consciously aware that, oh my gosh, is just to be aware of it without judgment, without any judgment of myself for having had the experience.
Yeah.
But just to evaluate it. What just happened there? Oh, there was a pothole. Wow. Okay. Be on the lookout for those moving forward, or whatever the case may be. All right. So, do you feel like we have handled topic number 1 for you, or is there anything left for you, do you feel, that needs to be discussed on that first item?
That's perfect. I feel that we've nailed that perfectly.
Wonderful. All right. Number 2, what additional skills do I need? And I forget what you said as the rest of that statement. I just have what additional skills. So what's that second statement?
What additional skills should I study and develop to position myself as a world-class coach? So initially I started reading books, and then I took this hypnosis class. I feel hypnosis was one of the strongest skill sets to learn right out the gate. It's just been powerful. It's transformed the way I think about things and the way I talk, because now I'm catching myself whenever I say something that is going to be a seed that gets sown into my existence, and then my reticular activating system notices that, and then it creates my whole reality. I'm more aware of those things, and it's just been really powerful to learn that. The downside to having learned that is now I call myself a certified hypnotist. And as a Christian, there's some people here in the Fort Knox area who don't quite see that as fitting with the gospel, if I can say that.
Well, let me pause you there, because I know that came up in your questionnaire that you filled out for me before our call today.
Yeah.
Is that something that is an issue for you?
Initially, I think it was. And then a couple weeks ago, I had an opportunity. There was a business, a brand new business out in Elizabethtown called Life Force Wellness Center. And she's a kinesthesiologist, and she does these chairs that vibrate and has sound and brain taps and all of these things, a salt room. It's amazing. But she was having something called
By the way, I just want to say that is, for those who don't know, that is a salt room. It's not an assault room.
That's correct. That's right.
Because I only say that is because as I was listening, because I'm listening really intently to everything you're saying, and I heard assault room.
You got it. It's
but it's like, wait a second, no, it was a salt room.
Yes, you got it.
I love it. All right, got it.
But yeah, she had a World Wellness Weekend just a couple weeks ago, and when I found out about it, I said, "Hey, how would you like to collaborate with a certified hypnotist?" She said, "Oh my gosh, yes." And so I went in and I did 3 sessions where I taught self-hypnosis to whomever wanted to come and listen. And the first day I had maybe 9 people. The second day I had 6 people. But in teaching that class, I found I was so free in teaching it. They were willing to learn it and to hear about it. And there were people that were even in those sessions where I got to demonstrate hypnosis and help them to work through some things that they left transformed. And after that moment, I just felt, yes, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And so I felt the more I do it, the less I care about what everybody else thinks.
Nice. I like that. And for me, what comes up, and I'd love to just explore this with you. It's not one of your 4 things. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Because it came out very clear that there have been some hindrances in relationship as a result of this.
Yes.
And that's why I wanted to bring this up. I have explored a lot of things that are no longer, very much accepted by my community of religious upbringing from the first 47 years of my life. And hypnosis would just be the scratching the surface. I've gone much deeper than that, my friend. Yeah. So, and quite frankly, my question for you is, do you think it's important for you to label yourself and communicate publicly, maybe on your bios or all this other stuff, that I am a certified hypnotherapist, or what I'm certified in hypnotherapy, or whatever, however you describe it. Is it essential for you to publicly pronounce that?
I don't know if it's necessarily that important, to be honest. I like to share it so people know that that's what I do, or it's a skill set that I have.
So, oh, see that, by the way, though, can you see the difference between those two statements? It's what
What
I
I
do,
do, and it's a skill set I have.
or it's because the thing is do you do anything other than hypnosis?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
See,
So,
see, the statement is it's what I do and a skill that I have.
mm,
Is that an accurate statement? It is a skill that I have, and it's one thing among a myriad of things that I do.
absolutely. That's better.
That's what I perceive.
Yeah, yeah.
And here, this is less coaching as much as, and more mentoring, because if I was coaching, I'd just stay in the question mode and reflective mode. But I'd love to just step into a little bit of a mentoring scenario here. And that is this idea of the fact that you found a place where it became natural and a perfect fit for you to bring up the fact that I'm a certified hypnotist and make an offer. Would you like to do a workshop with this? I'd love to come in and stuff like that. So there are all sorts of places where I go, Cliff Ravenscraft, where I can go in and say, hey, are you interested in having a spiritual related coaching and mentoring session where we can talk about your inner child scenarios and talk about how to get in touch with your inner being, your higher self? Would you like to learn how to apply the law of attraction and get in alignment with source energy? There are places where I will go and have that language, that conversation with people. But you won't find that language anywhere on my website.
Gotcha.
Because even for me, still, because of my upbringing, because of, creating 18 years of content, I have 50 podcasts, over 4,700 podcast episodes. And for 47 years of my life, I was this fundamentalist, evangelical, Protestant, Christian, dogmatic, very opinionated kind of way of seeing the world.
Sure.
And I attracted a very large audience where a very high percentage of my audience also was attracted to that. Mm-hmm. And if I were to, and I have played with this, by the way, being more public and pronouncing, hey, here's some expansion of the things that I'm into in the world and stuff like that. And quite frankly, it's like I have a person who is in my mastermind group. He agreed to be in the group for a year, everything. He's like, listen, Cliff, I want to cancel my membership. I don't want to be a part of anything that has anybody doing anything like this. That as far as I'm concerned, I'm out. So a bunch of other people unsubscribed from this and that. And it's like, it really caused a lot of people, the whole thing, just like the word hypnotism. Mm-hmm. For evangelical Christians, it's like, listen, dude, stay away from that. That's danger. That you've been told that. And so what if you were to understand it? Because the reality is when I studied hypnosis, and this is way before I studied some of the other stuff that I study today, when I studied hypnosis, I recognized that hypnosis is the fundamental of it. If you just take the word out, and if you only taught the practice, you would recognize that it's scripturally mandated and endorsed by the apostles in their teachings. Mm-hmm. Whatever is noble, whatever is pure, whatever is holy. Think only on these things. The renewing of, by the renewing of your mind. I mean, it is all through scripture, hypnosis is. Mm-hmm. The practice of self-hypnosis.
Absolutely.
But the phrase or term self-hypnosis comes with tons of baggage.
Yeah.
And so what I recognize is that you have the potential of speaking about your hypnosis and your certification when intuitively it feels right to do so. Mm-hmm. But the potential, if you wanted to, you don't have to bring it up. And when some people, like if somebody, they're a hardcore Christian that would definitely have an issue with that, you don't have to mention that at all. I recently had a conversation with a guy who's been a pastor for the last 35 years in his evangelical church. And the fact of things that I believe, that I study, some of the things that I have in my toolbox that I could use with that person, that just didn't come up in conversation at all. Instead, but however, did I use some of the techniques from all of that stuff in our conversation in an incredibly powerful way? Yes.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with conversational hypnosis?
Yes. Developed by Milton H. Erickson. Yes.
Yeah. And so I use conversational hypnosis. You've been hypnotized several times during this conversation today.
Absolutely.
But and so has and I know we're not speaking about the people who are watching or listening, but anybody who's watching this, they have been in a hypnotic state several times throughout this entire conversation. I know that I'm doing conversational hypnosis. And I'm even doing it with intention at times. Most of the time, I'm just doing it naturally.
Right.
And we all do. Every Christian I've ever met has been involved in hypnosis.
Yes.
But do you see how the term itself, you could choose to use it in some places and not, and actually create less of that pushback from some of those people. It could be less of a roadblock in relationship. Does that resonate with you, and does it help in any way?
Yeah, absolutely. It does resonate. I've felt the same way about it, especially with Marketplace Ministry. I haven't released any podcast episodes since about June. I have some that are recorded. I need to edit them and get them out. But with all of this new skill set and things going on, I'm not sure how to bring that up on the show, if I should even rebrand the show or just call it the Jason Smith podcast. I don't know. At this point, I don't know if Marketplace Ministry actually fits with what I'm trying to accomplish going forward.
I do not have the answer for you, but I can say I deeply resonate with what you're sharing.
Yes.
For me, I have a podcast that was originally called About the Church. And in September 2011, I decided that I no longer want to be a part of the traditional model of performance-based Christianity, and also this idea that the church is going to a building. I still very much had all of my fundamentalist and Orthodox Christian beliefs. However, I stopped going to the church. And so back then, I changed the name of the podcast from About the Church to Encouraging Others Through Christ. All right. And for me, when I came up with that name for the podcast, which harkens back to something I picked up as a screen name for Skype back in 1996, by the way. But excuse me. Anyway, actually, it wasn't Skype. It was the name of a Bible study group that I launched for the very first time, Encouraging Others Through Christ. But Christ for me then meant Jesus and the way of thinking about Jesus from that fundamentalist evangelical Christian way of thinking about Jesus. So Christ equaled that.
Yeah.
And today, I am very much open to a lot of world religions, and I am open to studying Hinduism, Buddhism, Sufism, all forms of historical mysticism, Christian mysticism. I just love exploring all of the different things where people have learned and discovered and explained their experiences with the divine or God or source or universe or whatever one might want to call it. And for me, I'm like, do I bring this up? And do I just launch a different podcast on spiritual awakening and deconstruction journey? And eventually I decided, you know what, I'm gonna continue this podcast. It's evolved over the years. It went from About the Church to Encouraging Others Through Christ, but now it's this. And you know what, I just said, you know what, I'm just going to be me. That's it. I'm just going to show up and be me. I'm going to speak about who I am and where I am today. This isn't about me getting business. This isn't about me trying to change anyone and what they believe. Just talking about what I believe with other people who are sharing what they believe, and it's very much out there. And I thought, do I change the name of the podcast? And for me, I still believe in what's called Christ consciousness. And I do believe that Jesus was in union with Christ consciousness, that Jesus was Christ consciousness incarnated in human form. And it's very much in alignment with Christian doctrine, but also my beliefs expand way beyond Christian doctrine. And so I decided to keep the podcast. It's called Encouraging Others Through Christ. And when I think of Christ, yes, I still think of Jesus. I still believe in Jesus. I'm still a follower of Jesus. Jesus is my guru, if you will. But I also have come to this place where, you know what, other people are connected to Christ consciousness, whether they use that language or not. And you know, it is what it is. I let other people determine for themselves where they are, but I still have chosen. I will come to the Cliff Ravenscraft show. And while I will still be myself, I will still communicate authentically and transparently. I will be very intentional about what words I choose to use in the Cliff Ravenscraft show, knowing that it's not so much that I'm concerned about what my fundamentalist evangelical Protestant Christians in my audience will think of me.
Right.
That's not my concern. But I want to be respectful of their very deep held convictions. And I don't want to use language that suggests that I believe that they're wrong and that they should somehow change to evolve to think what I think. Because that's, I don't, did that resonate? Was that helpful that I shared any or all of that?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's, yes. Goodness. Wow. So what's coming up for me right now is, yeah, hypnosis is something, it's a skill set that I have, and I can do it when I need to. But be careful with how I talk about it in certain places, like at church, for example.
What about, instead of being careful as if it's something dangerous, what if it's be intentional?
Yeah.
Be consciously aware of my environment and intentional with the language I use to communicate.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yes. Be intentional.
And what's coming up for me, Jason, is it's being intentional is less about concern about how this will impact the way they think about me and my relationship with them, but it's more about be intentional in how I communicate out of love and respect for what they believe.
Yeah. That's good. It's very helpful.
Awesome.
Yes.
Okay, so now back to number 2. What other skills do you want? Let me ask you this. You said, what other skills do I need to study and development? So let me ask you this. What do you already know? What are some skills that you would like to pick up and hone and add to your toolbox?
Okay. So I already know I have leadership. That's already been developed in me. Communication, I can communicate with better intention. Yes. Then there was this part of me that, because of the hypnosis, is leading me towards this idea of possibly exploring psychology. And whether that means getting a degree or just studying it and learning the principles and applying it, I don't know what that looks like yet, but that is something that I'm interested in. I feel that NLP is very closely related to hypnosis. So that would be an easy skill to jump to. And those are 3 that I'm aware of right now. If there's something else that I might be lacking that I need to work on, I don't know what else it would be.
Excellent. Well, psychology is something that is a huge topic that I study. I probably, I do say psychology and also philosophy together. I don't necessarily know that I suggest a lot of philosophy for you. But for me, I'm fascinated with philosophy, and so much of it leads to the psychology. Especially if you start studying psychology, you'll start getting into Carl Jung at some point, and Jung will lead you into the topic of philosophy. But yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. You know what I picked up was I went to Barnes and Noble. Do I have that book? Can I see it? I don't have it instantly available. I was looking to see if I could see it right there on my bookshelf. But I will go. Actually, you know what? Hold on.
Sure.
Okay, this isn't psychology, but I like to go to stores and pick up these kind of books. And this was $10, right? And it's like religion, a crash course. And they got pictures and stuff like that, and it's like the most basic introductory stuff. And I do mean basic. And then here is philosophy, a crash course, and I do have psychology, a crash course. And then there's the For Dummies books, and there are countless different variations of these types of books. So one of the first things that I did when I had these interests in these other fields was to read these oversimplified, high-level overviews of these topics. However, what I found for me, what naturally was happening was I would read a paragraph or two or a couple of pages or a section or a topic out of the book, and I would want to go explore more. And I would head over to YouTube and do research on a phrase, some sort of technique that was mentioned. And then all of a sudden, now I'm watching TED Talks or lectures or industry experts who are, and I'm getting it, for my opinion. And I went to college. I did 2.5 years at university physically, and then I did 2 years of online distance learning at Nazarene Bible College. So I'm very familiar what it takes to study these things at a university level. And I can tell you right now, while I have 0 college degrees, I have talked to people who are professional psychologists, and I've had coaching conversation with somebody who has multiple degrees in psychology, where I'm bringing up topics they've not yet heard about. And they're sharing things, and I'm actually tracking with them at their professional level. Because I'm into philosophy, I've actually had you and I connected very deeply on Clubhouse. But back in the day, I had people from India join my room, and they were really struggling from a psychological level. And it didn't track with me, because this person in their bio is all about their Hindu faith and stuff like this. And so I began asking them questions. Well, how deeply devoted are you to your Hindu faith? And then I start talking about Arjuna from the Bhagavad Gita. And he goes, "Oh, I haven't read that since I was a kid." And so I'm sitting there talking to a Hindu from India, reintroducing them to main key concepts from their faith tradition. But it all started with a philosophy crash course. And the next thing you know, I'm reading the Bhagavad Gita commentary by Paramahansa Yogananda, and I'm looking at the footnotes and reading the Upanishads that were the prior precursor to that. And I'm reading other people's commentaries on the Upanishads. And it's like, this is the rabbit trails, if you will. So I'm not sure if going to university and getting degrees is what you want, but I certainly encourage you if that's where your leaning and bent is. But I will also encourage you that you can be, if you wanted to, you could be a self-taught person. That's an option and a road. I did some coaching with Rich Litvin, and one of the things he pointed out in my second call, and I didn't know this, but I discovered, he pointed out that, Cliff, are you aware that you're an autodidact? Like, I've never heard of autodidact. And so I went and looked it up, and it simply says that you are a self-taught person, one who is able to pick up and learn incredibly detailed and complex information without the aid of a teacher. And I'm like, I totally agree with that, except for the fact that I think that I have an incredibly awesome teacher, and that is that divine wisdom connection with God that helps me, that is leading me and guiding me to the exact just in time learning that prepares me for that next conversation. And that's the other thing I want to talk to you about. And that is, what skills should I learn? What if you just let your intuition and your connection with God and God guide you to the next thing, wherever your heart, that prompting and that passion from within goes to?
Yeah, that's good. And that you bring up intuition, that's something also I want to learn how to train my intuition. I've started seeing that there are people who are intuition coaches. And so that sounds like a path to go and learn how to follow my intuition more deeply than I currently am.
Yeah. Can I give you a crash course in intuition?
Yes.
Like Cliff's version of this book on intuition. It's not necessarily how to train your intuition, but instead it's how to actually calm the vibrations of thoughts in your mind so that you can hear that voice within. See, your intuition is there. God, if you will, is speaking to you. God's omnipresent. There's never a moment of any day on this planet that you've ever existed where God is not in constant, nonstop, ever-present communication with you.
Yeah.
The only thing is just like for the last 47 years, WEBN, the classic rock station, has been broadcasting on 102.7 FM. And that radio signal has been going through the tri-state, Cincinnati, Kentucky, and Indiana tri-state area. It's been broadcasting. It's broadcasting right now. In fact, if I went and got a radio and tuned it to 102.7, you would hear it. All right. And just like Q102, playing pop hits of today, yesterday, today, and tomorrow. It's here. Warm 98. I could go and tune to all of these different 98.5 frequencies. I could tune the radio, right? So the thing is there's countless frequencies and vibrations of radio signals that are broadcasting messages all of the time. And I could tune into any of those things that I want. And what my mind is doing is it's constantly tuning to all of these different things.
Yeah.
But those are all externally coming. But there's a radio signal that has been there from the time you were born that is internally broadcasted. Seek the kingdom of God, and the kingdom of God is within. How old are you, by the way, Jason?
41.
All right, so I'm 50. Do you remember in the old days we used to have car radios and you had antennas that you could push down or retract electronically into the body of the car?
Yes.
And then when you did that, you had no ability to pick up a radio station?
Right.
This is what meditation or prayer, contemplative prayer, is. And it's sitting and just letting the all of the thoughts just kind of go, and tuning the dial of your heart, your mind, tuning that into that internal broadcast so that you can hear that. It's tuning into the frequency of God within. That's intuition. You actually did that several times during this conversation. Are you aware of that?
Yes, I am aware. Every time I went in and keyed into whatever.
You're doing it
I'm
now.
doing it now. Yeah.
And I can see it because here's your tell. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're going in instead of looking out. You're looking in. You have an eye movement that actually puts you in. And in fact, it's amazing if you think about this. Point where your eyes would point when you're going within. Exactly. And they will tell you this is the chakra known as the third eye, spiritual eye.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is that the intuition isn't something that needs to be trained, but instead so the crash course of intuition, if you will, is practicing the art of focus on the one signal that is within you, the voice within, to the exclusion of the distraction of all the other frequencies.
Yeah.
That's how you get into intuition.
Nice.
That's, by the way, that is an incredibly oversimplified explanation, and it's about the same level of quality of insight as to this book is on philosophy. But it is something that is fascinating. It's something that has been, it's been a passion of mine, intuition and learning and knowing it and being tuned into that voice. In fact, there's a friend of mine who gave me this paradigm shift, and it was so powerful. And that is, I used to believe that I would hear the voice of God and I would say, you know what, this is probably me, but it might be God. He says, but everything in my life shifted when I realized that God's speaking to me all the time. And so I began, when I started hearing that voice, I began to say, you know what, this is probably God. But I also accept the fact that this might be me. But the whole shift of that voice is probably me versus that voice is probably God.
Right. Nice. God's speaking all the time, but it might be me.
It might be me. I get caught up in acts of delusion every now and then.
Sure. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so when it comes to those topics, what skills and stuff of that nature, I would encourage you, my encouragement for you there, given the fact that I've been doing this coaching thing for more than 30 years, is that intuition is really the thing. Have you heard of the phrase synchronicity?
No, I have not.
I'm going to give you Cliff's crash course on synchronicity.
All right.
It's this idea that God is always speaking to you. All right. And saying, and so much that God is kind of saying, hey, turn right instead of left. Yes, I know you always turn left, but today I want you to turn right.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you get to work and somebody says to you, oh my gosh, did you see that accident on such and such? It happened at such and such exact time. It's like, oh my gosh, that could have been me if I would have turned left at that moment. You see where I'm coming from?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so it's and those things happen in our lives, but we think they happen every now and then. But they could be happening all the time, all day, every day.
Yeah.
Brother Lawrence was known to have this thing he called practicing the presence of God. And it's just tuning into that intuition. But synchronicity is this idea that I have the ability to always tune in to that intuition and be led and guided. And you'll find that this is naturally happening it's like, oh my gosh, a thought of a person that you haven't thought of in years or months, you haven't seen them in years or months, they come to your mind, and then all of a sudden you reach out and text them or make a phone call. And they're like, oh my gosh, I was just thinking about you. And it's like, whoa, how many times does that happen? That's synchronicity. The idea that there was a time when I was reading a book on such and such topic, and let's just say this is a very deep faith, spiritual oriented book. And I'm halfway through the second chapter and I have to put it down because I've got a call. And then I get off of that call and I'm at lunch, and because I'm fixing lunch and eating lunch, I'm not going to read that book, right now. Instead, I'm watching this YouTube video on technology. And that technology references a quote that was exactly the quote that was talked about in that chapter that I read half of this morning. And then they said, yeah, and did you see so-and-so? There's this great talk on YouTube on this subject, and it's linked in the show notes. And next thing you know, I'm now in the show notes, clicking on the link, and I'm watching this YouTube video that literally kind of just picks up with what God was speaking to me through the first half of the second chapter of this book. God is now continuing that conversation with me about the same topic from a completely different source. And then I finish that, and then I get into a coaching conversation that afternoon, and they say, you know what my single greatest number one struggle is And then they say this, and I'm like, oh my goodness. Let me read to you this highlight that I made in this book this morning, and let me share this YouTube video with you. And it's like, Cliff, that changes everything. It's like God is speaking directly to you, or to me through you. And that's synchronicity. And what if you could allow for your learning and studying and just exploring of different topics to master and study in your pursuit of taking your coaching to this level? What if you could just allow synchronicity to lead and guide that process?
Yeah. I could totally let that happen. That's easy.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Wow.
By the way, hasn't that naturally happened? Isn't that how hypnosis came to you?
Pretty much, I would say.
I can tell you right now, you didn't go looking for hypnosis.
I want to say I kind of did, but I get what you're saying. Yeah, because the first time I had experienced it was when I first heard you talk about it during our second coaching experience. And then it was months before I looked back at the transcripts or reread it again. But after I had had my hypnosis training, I was looking through the transcripts and reading it and listening to it. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's hypnosis. That's hypnosis. Because I started, one thing you said to me, you may not remember this at all, but you said from now on, you're going to begin to have memories. When you go to sleep, you're going to remember your dreams. And maybe 9 months after that, I'm starting to remember things from my childhood that I never remembered before. Like a dog that scared me when I was maybe 10 years old. It was a Doberman Pinscher, scared me when it stayed at our house, and it chased me to the top of the couch. I was frightened, terrified. And I go, what was the name of that dog? And all of a sudden it came to me. It was Chelsea. And it took me a while to figure it all out, but it was there. It's always been there. But it was when I first experienced hypnosis, and then I heard you interview Mike Mandel and Chris Thompson. And when I heard that, I'm like, I'm going to do this. And I read Psycho-Cybernetics, and they talked about hypnosis, and hypnosis was everywhere. And I thought, I need to learn this. I need to learn it.
But you notice hypnosis was everywhere. That's the synchronicity.
Yeah.
Cliff did this. Then I started reading this book, and then I started reading this book. Then I heard that interview, and then this, and then this. And then I decided I want to actually study this.
Yes.
That it's all of the breadcrumbs that is God leading and guiding. It's like, hey, here you want to coach, you want to have powerful influence, you want to have impact on kingdom-minded people.
Yeah.
Well, there is this skill that is incredibly powerful. By the way, chances are some people are really going to be turned off by the idea of this language, but the tools, the techniques, these are the things. Jesus used hypnosis.
I don't disagree with you. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
We could talk about that for hours, but we don't want to go there.
The whole Sunday morning service is nothing more than a hypnotism generating scenario. Let's get you in. We could go on. That's fun. All right. So are you good with number 2, the topic of what additional skills?
Absolutely.
Sweet.
Just be led by intuition and synchronicity.
Yeah, and follow the rabbit trail as deep as you feel led to go.
Absolutely.
I want to share one other, because we're probably not going to get deep or even go into topics 3 or 4. So that's why I'm glad that you prioritize these. Something else that I want to share with you, and that is, and I talk about this a lot with my clients. I'm going to pull open my Kindle here, and it's going to take a second to load. Go to my library, and I want to show you this. So in my Kindle, it's gonna, hold on, let's try it again. Ready, set, and go, camera, go. Oh, come on. There it is. All right. So you'll see that I have four main collections. Number one is spiritual / faith. Number two is coaching / personal development. Number three is entertainment, and number four is book summaries. All right. I want you to hear this. I am currently in the middle of, or in the process of, reading 89 spiritual / faith development books. I am currently in the process of reading 81 coaching / personal / professional development books. And I'm currently in the middle of reading, or in the process of reading, 9 entertainment-based books. As far as I'm concerned, I feel no compulsion to complete any of those books ever. Ever. However, what I do is, when I'm like, okay, in the morning, I have a habit of reading every day. In the morning, I'm like, okay, am I feeling spiritual / faith, or coach and professional development, or entertainment? Well, entertainment's usually in the evening, so I already know. It's one of those two. And then I'm like, okay, let's just do coaching and development. Great. I opened up the category. Now I have a list of books that I can choose from. And so, just to tell you right here, I did not mean to do that. I accidentally clicked on the book, and now it's going to try to open it, and I'm going to go back and close it. However, so the very best of Steve Chandler, which is all about his coaching stuff, his insights, I'm 12% of the way through that book. And if I click on it, it's going to open up to the last bookmark that I made. I will unbookmark it. I will read a paragraph. I'll read a chapter. I will read 3 chapters. It doesn't matter to me, but I will read as much as I want to read. If I make a highlight, then I make a highlight. If I don't, and as soon as I feel like I've gotten what I want out of that, I'll put a bookmark. I may not even be to the end of the chapter. I'll just put a bookmark and I leave it. And if I still have more time to read, I'll go over and it's like, oh, coach the person, not the problem. Well, that I'm 25% of the way through that. Or be your future self now. I'm 14% of the way through that. 10x is easier than 2x. I was 73% the last time I opened up that book, but I finished it via audio, so I can actually mark it as done. So I have tons of books, and it doesn't matter to me, because synchronistically, I allow myself to be guided to just the right thing that I feel prompted from within intuitively to open up and read that day. And as far as I'm concerned, if I see a book, somebody mentions a book, and I hear about it on a podcast, if it piques my interest and I'm like, oh, that sounds interesting, I go to Kindle, I send the sample to my book, or to my Kindle. Now, my Kindle will not let me highlight anything in a sample. All right. So if I'm reading the sample, which is usually the introduction and maybe a first chapter or 2 or 3, if I am reading the sample, and as I'm reading, anything there that I'd like to highlight, which would allow me to then go into my iPad or my iPhone and copy and paste and then journal about it, or if it's something I want to recall later and find easily in my highlights, just in case I'm on a coaching conversation and this topic comes up, find that highlight easier. That alone, the fact that I can't highlight it, but I want to highlight it. As soon as I want to highlight it, I then click the button and says, hey, this book is, it might be $4.99, $9.99, $19.99. Doesn't matter. Yeah. The question is, would it be worth it to have this ability to have this highlight? And then if the answer is yes, then I will buy that book with no strings attached, no expectation, no obligation that I will read any other words out of this book. But would it be worth it to me to have that highlight, that insight? Was that insight worth $20? Yes. So for me, this is how I go through. This is why I'm in the middle of so many different books. And on average, I complete somewhere between 3 to 10 books a year. But I read about 120 or 130 books a year. When I say I read them, that's not that I finish them. Yeah. I read about 120 or 130 books a year.
Sure.
Does that give you any insight or any feeling about learning and growing and this idea versus the traditional approach of read, study, complete, move on to the next thing?
I like it. It's a good system. I had a different system that I was using. I just went to the library and found all of the books that I thought would be interesting on coaching. I made a list of them, and I've been going down the list and reading the different ones that I'm able to check out. I picked up one book that I was getting into. I read a few pages in it, and then I returned it because I just wasn't reading the book. So
exactly. And the whole point there is just to say, don't, so many people that I've ran into when they're looking to learn a new skill or something like that, it's like, just like you, I'm very interested in NLP. I know I know I have this level of mastery of NLP. Okay. Which is I know enough to know some of the language and to know enough that I am able to use some form of NLP.
Mm-hmm.
So with that being said, though, I've actually got 3 different books on NLP from 3 different people. And I'm somewhere between 5 to probably 27% on any one of those 3 books. And I may or may not ever continue to read those 3 books.
Yeah.
And it's fine. But at one point, if all of a sudden NLP comes to me again and it's a passion and an interest again, I might go all in on it. And boy, when I go all in, I go all in. By the way, all of this is just me sharing with you my experiences of that learning process and how I go into this. None of this is for me giving you advice on how you should do it. It's
Absolutely.
just a different way of thinking about it than what most people might experience. I've seen far too many people say, you know what, Cliff? No, I didn't finish reading The Prosperous Coach. Why not? Because, well, I kind of got stuck on this chapter and I had to I really feel like I need to come to some sort of conclusion or decision about what I'm going to do with this topic before I could read any more of that book. And I'm like, okay, that's one way of doing it. It's like you could just read the book and just go through and see the overall process, and maybe that'll help you come to a conclusion or a decision. There's all sorts of different ways where people can get hung up on certain things, or some people will say, no, Cliff, I didn't do that because I have 3 other books, and quite frankly, I hate the book that I'm reading right now, and I can't bring myself to finish it, but I can't start your book until I finish that book. And I've got one more book in the queue before the one you recommended that's going to likely completely shift the entire way I see the world.
Yeah. I got you on that one. But yeah, I like what you do though, because you're letting your intuition lead you to what you should be reading or studying at any given time. And I think that's where we're going to get the most development out of, is because we're following what we're interested in. And then because we're already interested in it, we've set that intention, we're going to learn it faster. And even if it's just a paragraph or maybe it's a sentence, whatever it is, we're going to be able to take that in and integrate it into us immediately.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's wrong. I think it's a fantastic system that you've got, and might be something worth exploring to see if I could do something similar or find my own way.
Well, definitely find your own way, and incorporate as many or as little bits and pieces of inspiration from mine and or other people's methods as you learn and discover how they do these things.
Absolutely.
So Jason, the whole purpose of you reaching out for this live stream coaching experience was that, Cliff, I really want to take this, what I've been doing with coaching over these last 18 months, and I want to have a conversation with you about, what are some things that I can do to level up in my coaching? What are the top one or two insights that have come to you from our conversation today as you think about it right now?
As I think about it right now, number one, we talked about that highest wisdom state and how I'm already operating in it at a 75 to 80% level. And it's like riding a bicycle, and we can just get on the bike and just ride. I mean, there might be a time you fall off. There might be a time that you scuff your knee, whatever. Get back on the bike, keep riding. And the more that you do it, the more likely you are to master that thing. And so that's one of the biggest things that I take away from this today. And then the second one, without a doubt, is letting my intuition, or the Holy Spirit, as some people might say, guide me into whatever it is that I need to learn next. Instead of focusing on a particular plan of development, just allow that curiosity and and intuition to guide me to find what's the next thing to add to my toolbox. If I had a third one, it would be that piece where we talked about hypnosis and whether or not it's important to declare that I'm a Christian hypnotist, or whether it's just use that language in the appropriate settings so that the people who actually understand what it means are not offended by it, and I can love other people by using the language that's more appropriate in that setting, like a church setting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Using that language that will serve them and value their hardcore beliefs.
Yeah.
I like that. Wonderful. Jason, it's always an opportunity, an honor to have the opportunity to connect with you at this level. I'm thrilled that we've reconnected today. I'm thrilled that you have found this incredible skill of hypnosis and that you're seeing the value and the opportunity, not just for yourself that it offers, but it's very clear that it's had an impact on your life. And that I love that you had that workshop opportunity with that community. And man, it's so exciting. So real quickly, if people wanted to follow you beyond here, I have your URL down there. It's marketplaceministrypodcast.com. Can they find you there? Or is there someplace else you would want to send them?
Yeah, you can find me there, or you can find me on Facebook, Jason Smith. That's my public profile. I also have a Facebook page, Marketplace Ministry Podcast, Instagram, and I'm on TikTok as well. I can't remember my TikTok, but if you find, sorry, I don't remember what it is.
I tell you what, do you have all of that stuff linked on your Marketplace Ministry website? And if not, is that something you might consider doing on your About Me page? Here's some places you can find me online.
Absolutely. Yes, I will do that.
Sweet. I love it. Because I'm just imagining, there's probably it's probably real easy. There's probably only 3 or 4 Jason Smiths on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok.
I will make sure it's linked on marketplaceministrypodcast.com.
You don't have the value of a Cliff Ravenscraft.
I know.
I love it. Brother, I appreciate you so much. Thank you for coming on here and doing this, and I look forward to connecting with you again.
Yes, thank you so much.
All right, hang out for just a bit and while I wrap up the show here. And this is the part where I take Jason off and I go over here and I do this. There we go. If you are watching this live, or if you've made it this far into the replay of this video, I just want to say thank you. It's an honor to have your attention. It is an honor to be able to coach people. This is what I do, is I show up and entertain, educate, encourage, and inspire. And one of the things that I love doing more than anything else is having deep, meaningful coaching conversations. And if you would like to have a complimentary 90-minute one-on-one coaching experience with me for free, with no strings attached, no expectation, no obligation, you will ever become a paid client, and you want to do that here live on the internet, all you have to do is email me right there, cliff@cliffravenscraft.com, put live stream coaching in the subject line and say, hey, Cliff, if you have an open spot, I would love to do a live stream coaching conversation with you. One of the reasons why I'm able to do this, even if you have no intention of ever becoming a client of mine, no worries whatsoever. This allows me to show up and just demonstrate who I am and how I show up in these coaching conversations. And it's very important for me because it allows other people to say, hey, you know what? I think I'd like to hire Cliff, or I'm thinking about hiring Cliff. I've been following for years. And they're seeing these coaching conversations that I'm doing in live streams, and they're going and applying for my one-on-one coaching or my next level mastermind or some other things of opportunities that I have to work with me. And if that's you, if you are one of those people who have been watching this and you're like, you know what, I think I'd like to have a one-on-one. And I think that I might actually hire Cliff, whether it's his mastermind group for full-time self-employed business owners, or maybe you're not somebody who's a full-time self-employed business owner, but you would like to engage with me with paid coaching. You're just not wanting to do it in a live stream. You'd like to have a private one-on-one. I'd still be willing to offer you a complimentary 90-minute one-on-one session, and it doesn't have to be live stream if you, in fact, are thinking about hiring me. So all you'd have to do is email me, Cliff, right there, cliff@cliffravenscraft.com, and just put coaching in the subject line and just speak to me with whatever words to describe what it is you're looking for. And either way, whether we're broadcasting live to the world or we're in a private one-on-one, there is a very real opportunity for you and I to be on a coaching conversation within the next 7 to 10 days. So if you're feeling that prompting within, I encourage you, send the email right there. Until next time, my friends, I encourage you to take everything you do to the next level. Bye-bye.